According to the 20th century Ceylonese philosopher and historian Ananda Coomaraswamy, Vedanta affirms the existence of reincarnation. However, it's a reincarnation of a special kind. It's a reincarnation or rebirth of a philosophical and spiritual type. And death is only the threshold one has to cross again and again until one reaches the center of truth. In his seminal essay, The Vedanta and Western Tradition, published in the American Scholar in 1939, Coomaraswamy explained Adi Shankaracharya's Vedanta as being harmonious with a larger Western tradition of metaphysics. He repeatedly warned that modern readers, especially scholars trained only in one language, psychology or anthropology, often misunderstood Indian texts because they approached them with the wrong habits of interpretation. He also tried to make Vedanta accessible by placing it beside Plato, the Gospels, St. Augustine, Dionysius, Meister Eckhart, and other figures familiar to European readers. Coomaraswamy was not at all casual about reincarnation. He wanted to defend the concept against its simplistic notions that plagued the modern world. Coomaraswamy's definition of reincarnation was straightforward and quite unusual. He held that the common idea of reincarnation, that the very same dead person returns in another human body, was not what Vedanta truly believed. He argued that this popular belief was a misunderstanding of Indian symbolic language. In his view, the Upanishads rather spoke of transmigration, metempsychosis, karma, and the passing on of qualities, tendencies, and forms. Accordingly, a person did not come back as the same historical individual. Instead, what continued was something deeper than the ordinary personality. And what was handed on was not a literal second life of the same ego. Coomaraswamy drew a sharp distinction between reincarnation and transmigration. By the word reincarnation, he meant the rebirth of the same being and personality, and he held that a literal manifestation of this was absolutely impossible. By contrast, transmigration, which is a movement of life, character, and causal inheritance through forms and generations, was quite possible and within the realms of Vedantic teachings. He gave the example of children receiving traits from parents, and he compared this to the old Indian maxim of the father being reborn in the son. That was not for him a second earthly life of the same person. It was the continuation of type, tendency, and causal patterns. In the same way, he linked this to Christian ways of speaking about inheritance, original sin, and the descent of the human species from Adam. Coomaraswamy's larger metaphysical claim was that the real self was not the body or the ordinary mind. He insisted on a sharp distinction between the temporary psychophysical person and the true spirit, which he identified with Atman or Brahman. The body, soul, and mental life belong to the visible field of change. The spirit is the knower, the witness, and the true person. After death, the bodily and psychological vehicle falls away, but the spirit returns to its source. If one has lived life with one's consciousness fixed only in the ego, that ego perishes. If one has lived in the spirit, then something enduring continues. In that sense, the soul does not reincarnate as a new self on earth, or rather, consciousness is released, deepened, and advanced. Coomaraswamy explained this movement through a series of images. One of the most important is the journey from the edge of a field to its center, where the spectator or the supernal sun sits. Human life in this image is pictured as crossing fences or levels of reference. Each crossing is like a death of a lower self and a rebirth into a higher state. This is why he said the language of rebirth should be understood as progressive regeneration, not as a soul hopping from one body to another. The real change is internal and spiritual. It can begin before death, continue at death, and go beyond death. Time, in the deepest sense, does not govern it in the way ordinary history does. Coomaraswamy's teaching on reincarnation was really a correction. In his own words, no doctrine of reincarnation, according to which the very being and person of a human who's once lived on earth and is now deceased will be reborn of another terrestrial mother, has ever been taught in India, even in Buddhism. He did not accept the popular modern picture of repeated earthly lives for one personality. He believed that picture to be too crude, too literal, and too attached to the ego. As he saw it, what Vedanta teaches is that the apparent individual is only a temporary form, while the true self is the spirit, and that spirit may be reflected in many lives, many generations, and many stages of waking. But it's not trapped in a simple cycle of personal rebirth. The point of Vedanta is not to entertain curiosity about past lives. It's to awaken a person from ignorance so that one may know what one truly is. In that sense, Vedantic understandings of reincarnation are less about physical rebirth than about liberation from the very habits of thought that make reincarnation seem like the whole story of humankind.